Hello, welcome to Scratching the Surface. I'm Jarrett Fuller, and this is my podcast about design criticism and practice. On today's episode, I'm talking to Francisco Laranjo. Francisco is a graphic designer, writer, editor, and is currently publishing the excellent journal and research project Modes of Criticism. In this conversation, I talked to Francisco about his own background in the origins of the Modes of Criticism project, his thoughts on design criticism, and how to use design as a critical tool, as well as all the blurriness around these terms like critical design, speculative design, design fiction, and we kind of parse out some of that and what those terms mean and how we use them. I am a big fan of Modes of Criticism. I have both issues and have read them multiple times, so it was really interesting for me to talk with Francisco about how he thinks about his work and the discourse in general around contemporary graphic design. This is a deep conversation, and there's a lot in here from theory to philosophy to politics, and it's one that I know I'll be listening to multiple times to really get everything. It was an honor to talk to him and kind of get his thoughts on these things. So I hope you feel the same way and enjoy this super interesting conversation with Francisco Laranjo. I kind of wanted to start, though, because I discovered Modes of Criticism probably about 2 or 3 years ago or so, and to me it just basically came out of nowhere, and I don't really know anything about you or your background, and so I wanted to start just kind of really quickly going over who you are and how you got interested in design, and specifically in this idea of critical graphic design.
It's I think a combination of several things. I had the privilege of having two art teachers at home. Both my parents are art teachers. So that became and had a tremendous impact in influencing my interests in education.
Yeah.
My father is a painter and university professor, and my mother is a visual arts teacher in middle school.
Oh wow!
And they have a quite reasonably rich library in terms of art theory and criticism. So I've been and inevitably most of their friends ended up being artists, painters, sculptors. So I was exposed always to this kind of environment and from a very young age. My mother actually did the first BA in graphic arts degree in Portugal after the Carnation Revolution in 1974.
Oh wow!
So it was a very modernist education that then would later generate big debates and some heated discussions during my BA.
I bet.
And so I was exposed to a lot of authors in art theory who were quite prominent in the 70s. Via my parents, like Oswald Spengler, John Berger, even Portuguese authors like José Gil, and other French like Gilles Lipovetsky or Rudolf Arnheim, and so I was influenced by a lot of this environment that surrounded me every day. So I think that this interest and always being challenged and being fed with more and more of this content and their own concerns and investigations, and together with a fascination with technology, and I think putting that fascination in conjunction with a theory that I was always being exposed to. Led me to study graphic design at ESAD. It's in Matosinhos, the northern city in Portugal, and I had a very kind of nostalgic modernist education, although mixed with a lot of international influences. So even though it was a a degree mostly focused on its technical aspect, and with a big gap between the theory modules and the studio modules. I think I was fortunate to be exposed by a lot of tutors to authors that ended up politicizing my views of design, and I'm remembering, for example, of Paul Virilio, who became important and still is to me, Derek Kerkovi and others, the Portuguese sociologist Boaventura de Sousa Santos, and a few of authors that really helped connecting politics with design and making that relation a bit more evident. And at the same time, this degree was having an over focusing on this technical aspect.
Right.
There was a international conference called Personal Views, curated by Andrew Howard, who brought to the school many designers that came almost with a space of 1 month. Over the period of 2 or 3 years, and it really compensated for that lack of bridging theory and practice, which should have never been separate.
Right.
And so people like David Crow or Lucian Roberts, Til Triggs, Jan Van Toorn, Tony Credland, Catherine McCoy, Max Brunsma, Paul Elliman, Ken Garland, and some were just, I think, a few names who came to the school and really encouraged us to look beyond the kind of watertight, supposedly neutral bubble that they still promoted at the time. And so I think some confrontation started to become more evident, and I think that shaped a bit and started to confront a bit my own understanding of design, which was very centered in the purity of modernism and the ideal of producing work that was long lasting and that was supposedly universal. So that was that together with the authors that I mentioned, I think started to shape a bit that interest in continue to pursue that interest in questioning my own education, which then I later developed. After even during the BA, I've done a research project in East Timor, which is just north of Australia.
Oh, okay.
For 5 months to develop the visual identity of the national parliament, and it was also a very good complement to the education that I was having in Portugal, because it's a country who had a brutal impact with the colonization, and it was very humbling to see what would be the actual potential of design in this kind of post-colonial situation.
Right.
Very it's always dramatic, and so it was a good experience. After I came back to Portugal, I worked a lot for the cultural sector, doing visual identities for production companies, and some films by the Portuguese director Manuel de Oliveira. And after participating with a good friend of mine, a product designer, Ricardo Figueroa, we participated in the national National Biennial of Design, Experimenta Design, who started, I think, in 2001 while I was doing my BA, and that also was a good example on trying to politicize design, because the centralization of Lisbon as this city who absorbs everything and all the investment and all the decision making, and that is also I think a big influence of this kind of attitude comes from being from Porto, which is the second city, a bit like the relation between Barcelona and Madrid, and this kind of attitude of fighting against decentralization, right, and the politicization of all decision making. Was made evident even for people who were trying to avoid any kind of relation between design and politics at the very basic level, just by the design biennial that just invited designers from Lisbon, and all the program was very centered in the institutional powers that decided the role of design in Portugal. So that became quite interesting in the context of the degree also.
So was this kind of political consciousness, was that, and you mentioned this a little bit, but were your classmates at the time also kind of feeling that? Was this a very common kind of interest in kind of connecting design and politics and looking at it through this wider lens, or was this kind of a interest that was singular to you at the time?
No, it was definitely not singular. There was these were always difficult times in Portugal, with a constant change of government from the socialists to the social democrats, and the rise of new parties like the left bloc, and different alternatives to the dual party system, that only started to become actually more evident just a few years ago, with the latest election of the government. Was a coalition of the Socialist Party, the Left Bloc, and the Communist Party, and I think that those alternative parties and those alternative political options started to become relevant on commenting, for example, on the invasion of Iraq, and so it was started to be possible to see all the criticism of Bush, and even visually, and so those things are rapidly disseminated on TV and elsewhere, and so all those things came together. So it was definitely a collective, but not. When I say collective, I wouldn't say that it would be the whole school. I think that, especially because of being a very technical oriented degree, it will be a minority, but it was still a collectivity.
Right. And it's interesting because I first kind of came to your work through Modes of Criticism, and hearing that background, I feel like I can kind of situate that a little bit better, of where your ideas for that project came from. But I'm curious, what were the origins of the Modes of Criticism project?
The origins, I think, were more rigorously shaped during my MA at the Royal College of Arts. Okay. Before that, I did an internship as a consequence of that biennial at Sagmeister in New York, and that was an experience that allowed me to become very disenchanted with design, and to understand better the kind of rhetorics at that level, and the pragmatics, and the terminology used, and I think that was only maximized during my MA, and the article of Kenneth Fitzgerald I think from 2008, called I think "Do Not Read Me, I Am Boring."
Yeah.
Is quite clearly articulated in identifying some of my concerns and based and related to the experience I had, for which I'm actually very grateful. And then during the MA, I continued to pursue this ways to understand and to challenge or change this disenchantment that I had with the current graphic design practice at the time. This was 2006, 2007, okay. And so this was mirrored by the state also of design education, still very centered now in London, and this was pre-financial crisis, so this was a very blurry times of a lot of playfulness, and Daniel Leetok was extremely popular at the time, and the design collective Abaki, who were tutors and during the time I was a student there, and I could see this complete blurriness. The department was called Communication, Art, and Design, so there was a complete people, all my friends and all the students, they could freely pass from art to design, and from the gallery to the studio, and everything was a kind of a peace and love exchange, and this I think caused me a lot of concern, and it was evident with a kind of over decorative visual articulations that were being done, and they were largely unquestioned, and so with the help of tutors like David Blamey or John Wozencroft, who kept exposing me to more and more references, I tried to see how could I use design as a graphic design as a tool to question the discipline. So to do a kind of graphic design criticism in practice.
Yeah.
I've done a few films with under John Wozencroft on trying to critique society and graphic design, and trying to do some short films about graphic design criticism, and Arc magazine, the magazine of the students, was a good platform that initiated me to editing and commissioning, and a lot of heated discussion with my friends and colleagues of who should we commission and who should we leave out, and also this is actually the first times I started to write in English, and that became a good platform to be exposed to that editorial aspect and the benefits of that confrontation between editorial teams and all the steps that you have when you are producing a journal or a publication.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad. I love that you brought up this idea of kind of the confusing rhetoric around graphic design, and that's something, and the blurriness of these terms, that's something that has come up again and again for me as I've been working on this project, and I feel like you have run into the same problems of and you even wrote a piece for Design Observer called Critical Graphic Design, Critical of What? And it's all about this idea of like, what does critical graphic design mean? What is design criticism? Is critical graphic design different than design criticism? Is that different than speculative design or design research? How do you kind of parse out those terms, or how do you kind of define that under the umbrella of your work?
I think that under the umbrella of my work, I think it's always important to understand the fundaments of the disciplines, and that's something that I've been trying to do with my research at the London College of Communication, in trying to understand the state of design criticism, and to develop methods that use this emergent terminology to extract methods and tactics that can help shape a critical practice. So the goal is not as much to focus on the terms, but to use it as a kind of a temporary terminology that allows an examination of the discipline and can contribute to its betterment. So I think something that is key, and that has been debated for quite some time. I went to a conference in 2013 in Adelaide, which was a critique 2013 conference, and this was a recurrent debate, the difference between or the confusion that often people have between critique, criticism, critical.
Right.
And they are different things, and they have different goals and different definitions, even though they share often the similar pillars. And the critical theorist Nancy Fraser, she said that no one has yet improved on Marx's definition of critical theory as the self-clarification of the struggles and wishes of the age.
Yeah.
I think it's possible to look for the fundaments of criticism in critical theory or literary theory with via Terry Eagleton, for example, and based on that, I think it's started to be possible to identify some criteria that allow to identify what is critical. I think that these separations are important, even between critical design and design that is critical. There are different things.
Right.
You cannot put them in the same box. I think it's quite important to not take just one single definition as an universal definition, but to try to map all these different historic precedents, and to start from there and see how they evolve, and how they remain or not relevant in current political and social conditions, and the current practice of graphic design. So I'm remembering, for example, of Noel Carroll, the art critic, who said that. That criticism is divided into different activities, like description and contextualization, classification, elucidation, interpretation, and analysis. And all of these are kind of subservient to evaluation, and that criticism is evaluation. But then he still has a very conservative approach of the critic as this authoritarian,
right.
A superior voice that sheds light on people, which I don't identify with, and disagree that it should be the kind of posture or role of the critic. So I think that what I've been trying to do is to map all these different interpretations and historic precedents, and by identifying the kind of the pillars of criticism, and via politics, ideology, and what I just mentioned of literary theory and critical theory, to see to find dimensions that can be translated and applied to graphic design, and how these can be related to the rich discourse in graphic design theory and criticism that has been mapping this for at least some some decades, from
Right.
the designer as author to the designer as editor, to now maybe the designer as researcher.
Yep.
So I think that this kind of this temporary terminology is not useful necessarily for just for its for the sake of its own existence, but because it helps to create this kind of critical distance and to examine failures and gaps in design practice and in design discipline, and with that kind of suspended time can help continue to shape a better and more a better discipline that can contribute to society with more substance.
This is kind of a weird question, but it was something I was thinking about as I was thinking about things I wanted to talk to you about, and I started thinking about it again when you were answering that last question. Is there's this certain, I don't even know if this is a question other than it's just kind of something that I've been thinking about that I'm curious if you have thoughts of. I don't even know exactly how to phrase it, but how this idea of critical graphic design has become this term for a lot of people that's a certain aesthetic, and it's not even a way of thinking, and it's the stretched type, the drop shadows, the kind of meta haven-esque, and so people just see stuff like that and they call it critical graphic design, or people say like, I want to do critical graphic design, and they make it look like that. And I feel like you designed modes of criticism almost ironically to comment on that idea. And even on the cover of the first one, and you have like the text that's kind of going sideways that doesn't say anything other than that it's going sideways. Is that just a certain laziness of design discourse that those things have become linked, or where did that aesthetic become associated with critical graphic design?
I think that just because graphic design has a much richer legacy in critically engaged design practice than product design. It became much more easily dismissible, and as identifying key practitioners who are developing work under that umbrella, and so the term within the 2-3 years passed rapidly from emergent to trendy to
Right.
kind of pejorative, and now no one really wants to say that they want to do critical graphic design because it has a kind of a overmocked, ridiculous connotation that
Right.
is not taken seriously, and I think that it doesn't necessarily have to be. I think that the goal should be for people to develop a critical practice, not to be critical graphic design practitioners, and ideally we wouldn't even need to use the word critical in behind before practice, because the discipline would already be critical. Well, that's a bit utopian, and I think that this kind of having a critical approach will always be marginal. It's part of the attitude, and you cannot expect critical practice to be a kind of mainstream majority, even though we can continue to strive for that to happen.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot as I've been working on this, is how, at least in the United States, I feel like design criticism, as in writing about design, but then also critical graphic design, is often seen as elite or academic or coming from a place of privilege. And something I've been thinking about a lot is, how can I show that critical graphic design, design criticism, whatever these words that you want to call it, isn't just for like this group of well-educated white men to do and talk about and work in. And how can other voices that are not Western be incorporated into this kind of conversation and into this kind of work? And I feel like that's probably something that you've wrestled with also. And, I think even the first issue of Modes of Criticism kind of fits into that stereotype a little bit, probably. Do you have any thoughts on that, or how do you kind of think about that in achieving that kind of utopian state that you talked about? Is that possible at all, or is there a way to at least make it available to more people, or to have more people a part of that discourse?
Yes, I think that what I've been trying to do, and trying to work and speak with a lot of people from different places who have been doing very pertinent research and related to what you're arguing, like Luisa Prado and Pedro Oliveira and Matthew Kem and Ahmed Ansari. So you have Australia, Pakistan, Brazil, who have started the decolonizing design platform,
right?
And have been doing very interesting and pertinent debates at the most recent at Malmö University in Sweden, and I think that what I've been trying to do and develop with my research is methods, and with students from both BA and MA at the University of Westminster and the Royal College of Art and Sandberg Institute, is to develop methods that can embed criticism in the design process and to politicize the design process. And so criticism is not seen as something reflected that you do after a project is completed, but that is a tool throughout the process that helps you to politicize your approach to design and to develop your own methods. So, for example, at the beginning of the semester with the students, we do a mapping of the classes' political orientations. Initially, using the political compass as an initial prompt, and then we identify also race and sex and gender, and that stays in the studio throughout the whole semester, and so. People start being much more self-conscious, and there's a kind of productive tension, and so when they have specific projects throughout the year, we try to identify the political ideologies of the clients, and how they map against their own, and doing different visualizations, even using fiction of what would be the work that would be politically affiliated with that client, and then how they would develop something that would sit in its complete opposite, and try to use also to make all these tensions visible, and to say, okay, so if you want to have a kind of a radical left approach, what are your references and your influences that are informing this kind of approach, and how is this being visually articulated in relation to this specific ideology? Is it reinforcing it, or is it subverting it? And so identifying power structures and privilege is a big part of the work I've been trying to do in applying criticism as a productive tool in the graphic design process, and making through merging both writing and fiction and kind of and different critical visualizations, to allow to them to build tools that can challenge their way of working throughout the research and production process, not just something that you do after something is completed.
Right. And that is something that I wanted to compliment you on, and compliment the Modes of Criticism project on, is I feel like a lot of writing about design can end up being self-congratulatory or kind of navel-gazing, and not actually kind of strong, relevant critiques about how design is situated in the world at large. And I feel like so much of the work that you're doing is really looking at kind of the wider world and figuring out, how does design, how can graphic design influence that? How is graphic design influenced by that? I'm even thinking of just the things, this is going to sound kind of funny, but even the things that you tweet about on the Modes of Criticism Twitter account and the things you link to are very politically engaged and very relevant and very important, for designers to be thinking about. And I think, this is a very kind of broad statement, but I think at least up until recently in the United States, a lot of designers didn't think about that. I think the last election has definitely changed a lot of the discourse around graphic design in the United States, but for a long time, that was a very marginal conversation. The question that I was kind of getting to is, what are the issues or the topics that you think are important for designers to be talking about and thinking about in their work today?
I think I would link back to what Nancy Fraser said via Marx. It's the struggles and wishes of the age. I think that I think the aspects that designers should be addressing are the ones that are infrastructural and that are affecting the way people live and think and act, and that's something that has been lacking for a long time in design education, and has been already important steps and taken towards the change of this kind of mentality or mindset. So I think that all these issues that are that we are dealing with every day, the kind of the rise of a kind of a new fascism across the world, together with strong currents that are kind of anti-decolonial, and that they are kind of nostalgic for a kind of imperial approach, and that is seen both from autocratic regimes to Silicon Valley. So you have it on kind of both complete different spectrums, and that's something that I've been trying to always expose through in the journal, especially even more in the second volume, and that I always try to work with the students, and more recently in a more kind of semi-failure with the latest cover of the journal Base, which was the former Occupy Times of London, with a kind of a collage of what would be the struggles of our time. So there was a kind of a visual articulation of all these different layers of walls being built, refugee crisis, the servers' rooms. So. To see how this could be articulated in a way that would be productive in relation to the content of this first issue of the reborn Occupied Times. So I think that the main goal of these methods and the theorization of these terms is really that the effect in students and designers is of a greater awareness and of a greater politicization of their approach to design, and that ultimately that develops an interest in that in the infrastructure, in the systems that define the way we live, and by doing that, it starts giving them tools and knowledge to work towards the preferable futures that we should aim to.
Well, you started to answer this a little bit, but I'm curious, what's next for modes of criticism, or what are your kind of overall goals for the future of that research and that journal?
The third issue, which should come out in a few months, will focus on design and democracy.
Oh, great.
And so it will have a series of different approaches to this subject. I will also talk about the project I've been coordinating with Annelies de Vet between the RCA and the Sandberg Institute, which brings the RCA students to Amsterdam, and then the Amsterdam students come to London, and they develop methods and try to examine the kind of a fading democratic condition of current society, and try to see what are the potential tactics in a kind of a post-truth fake news world, and see how different how old approaches to graphic design, such as kind of subvertising, are no longer valid, or they struggle with bots and with different propaganda machines that exist online, and they are able to absorb and kind of spit imagery very fast without allowing any sort of time for dialogue. So I'll be reflecting on that, and else keepers will debate something that has been also present in my research, which is the presence of style in visual research, and how style and research shouldn't be words that go hand in hand, and so we'll be talking on that. So it will have some tangential some intersections with the democracy, but that will hopefully provide a range of different approaches, and so that's the main goal at a short term. On a more longer term, I would like to create at least until the end of the year a kind of a platform in Porto for a decentralized pedagogical experiment in graphic design that will bring to Porto many of the contributors of modes of criticism to run seminars on a kind of a postgraduate level. And so we would have sent. I've already spoken with a few of them, like Pedro Oliveira and Luisa Prado from the project of decolonizing design, and so we would try to do a kind of a parallel parallel course that would run on a kind of residence basis, and it's not. This is not obviously revolutionary, but it's something that I've been personally interested. Since 2012-13, there was a symposium at the RCA on the future of graphic design education, and it was easy to see that design institutions have become mostly too big for profit and financial sustainability to be able to adapt and react quickly and become tactical in their approach to education, and in allowing students to develop their own education, and we could see that, for example, the design Patty Institute, which is in South Korea, headed by Han Sang-soon, and I think he quit university and created this workshop where students define their education, and they just bring people in, and they do one trip throughout the second year of their masters, which I don't think is validated by an university. And this is something also that interests me. Obviously, that validated courses are needed
Yeah.
to be able to teach in academia, but I think that smaller institutions who are kind of more nomadic, they are decentralized, so that they don't have necessarily all the facilities, but use the resources of the city or the location where they are to function as a kind of to function as a network, as a kind of a cooperative of institutions, will seriously challenge the more established large scale educational system, and so I would like to, and this is as my research evolves and I become interested in radical pedagogy and how this could all these debates and all this research could be even more implemented even more deeply in graphic design, and either through publications or conferences. So I would like to bring the contributors on a kind of a residence base, and have maybe, I don't know, maybe 15 students that can contribute to this debate, and really work with different institutions in the city, and even work for the city in a very public manner, and conduct research and identifying gaps in the city's social and social conditions and political conditions, and then use different case studies to then offer these methods and these experiments and all these debates in a productive way, either through publication or some conferences.
That's great. That's so interesting. I have one more question just to kind of wrap it up. It's a two-part question. I'm curious, kind of, who are you reading right now? Who are the writers that you're enjoying that are influencing you? And then the second part are, who are the designers that are kind of doing interesting work that you're really kind of gravitating to, or people that might not be as well known, that kind of people should know about, who are interested in this sort of critical practice?
I think I tend now to been reading recently, with my recent interest on not that recent. When I say recent, maybe 3-4 years ago, on precarity and the political conditions that have an effect on designers' way of working, and that has brought up the interest in algorithms and automation, and I've been reading very recently Lucy Suchman with the book Plans and Situated Actions, and on the problem of human and machine communication. And she has done a very interesting research with the presence of the Xerox printer in the office environment, and that for me was a very early example that can be related to graphic design, how the interaction between office workers and the Xerox machine, and the communication they had with it, can be translated to now with the AI. And it's still easily applicable, and the book was written in 1986, and other issues that interest me. Obviously, Evgeny Morozov is recurrently writing interesting essays. Rob Harning on the New Inquiry, and I'm always surprised by the prolific production of Cameron Tonkin Wise.
Oh yeah,
in the design.
Yeah, he's great.
And so I would say most recently these are the authors I've been that I read fairly regularly. But normally, my interests, I try to share them on Twitter or online, and I try to share as many as the references as I can with the posts and the articles. And so these blogs from eFlux to New Inquiry, I think they are good. They are good references, and the book Open Cahier from the Open Manifesto journal.
Yeah.
It also has a good quantity of not widely known authors. And then I often read Portuguese authors like José Gil, who's a good writer, and occasionally Lipovetsky, which the books in French tend to take a long time to be translated to English.
Yeah.
So that those would be, I think, out of the top of my mind, the authors I've been most recently reading. And in terms of design, I think that increasingly we see student work that is very pertinent, and that I think can have a great impact if they're able to maintain that kind of resilience. And that's why I disagree with Rick Poynter when he said on Print Magazine on the article Critical Emissions that I give too much value to work produced by students. It's fine that the Yale student writes an essay or the Oxford student writes an essay in the school's journal, but that will never or that will not appear in the main news. And I disagree. I think that a lot of hope and a lot of good, pertinent, and urgent work is being produced today by students, and both at BA and MA level, and with a kind of rigor and resilience and motivation that can and hopefully will produce some systemic change, both at disciplinary and societal level. And I saw one recently called Common Affairs. This is a collective of mostly female students, which are pursuing the idea of visual journalism and using design to investigate and to interview and to address different issues. And I think it's a good example of young designers with a highly politicized way of working almost since they start their BA, which is fortunately and increasingly not that rare,
right?
And so I think that would be an example I would recommend more than some more established star designers.
That's great. Francisco, thank you so much for talking with me. I'm a big fan of your work. I think you're doing something that's important, and I kind of can't wait to see what you do next. And I think that this was so interesting and great, and it was really great to talk to you. So thank you so
likewise.
much.
Thank you, Jared.
This episode was recorded on February 10th, 2017. Our theme music is by Andy Borgasani. We're on Twitter @Surface Podcast. You can find us on iTunes and SoundCloud and at scratchingthesurface.fm. Thanks for listening.